Episode 55 of the podcast. This week we're talking about dog nail scratch boards, and we're also talking about lifting dogs.
You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Neumeier Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, certified behavior consultant for canines, certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is where grooming and training meet.
There's a current trend that I want to discuss today, and that's file boards. If you are not familiar with these things, it's teaching dogs to scrape down their own nails on a board that has some sort of sandpaper on it. You know, something to file their own nails. It's for the dog to trim their own nails by scraping their paw against a board. And at first glance, it seems like a fine idea. All right, I get that. The nails are being filed, the dog is choosing to do it on their own, their owners are able to do it at home, and it all sounds really, really great. Here's the problem, or at least my problem with it. It doesn't help a dog who's afraid of nail trimming and foot handling to be comfortable with nail trimming and foot handling. It bypasses the foot handling. Now, if nail trimming were the only type of foot handling that's necessary in a dog's life, I guess I would feel differently, but it's not. And if it were a super fast way to get a dog's nails done properly while they're learning all the other stuff, then I might feel different about it. But you know what? It's not a fast way. So teaching a dog to scratch their own front nails on a board takes a little bit of time. Teaching a dog to file their back nails, that takes a longer amount of time, and it's really difficult for the average owner to do. It's not a great way to get the nails trimmed. I want you to think about if a dog scratches with their paw, it's more likely to be the middle two toes getting a good filing. And the edges of the outer nails can be really tricky to get to. So one of the solutions that I've seen is that instead of using a flat surface, they're using a curved surface for the dog to scratch. So sort of like a large PVC pipe that's been cut in half and they're using the inside surface. So it's curved and the dog's outer toes are also scratching down. But that's not really creating a really good nail trim, right? That still isn't an ideal nail trim. So I suppose if you were to go toe by toe with a regular file, but I just can't get on board with doing this sort of thing and working so much training with the average dog. I just don't see the bigger picture being addressed, which is that this dog needs to learn how to let us do some things to their paw. All right. And I want you to think too, it's not that I'm against filing. If you're doing trimming with a clipper or if you're doing trimming with a nail trimmer, regular nail trimmer, if you're doing it with a grinder, if you're doing it with a file, that's not the problem. It's the idea that it's very hands off and the dog is doing it on their own. So what kind of extreme case would it have to be for anyone to think that that's a really good idea to avoid teaching foot handling? And that's a good question that I want all of us to be thinking about when we start seeing these things about, oh, he's using a nail board. Because what we're doing is we're bypassing the teaching of foot handling. Okay, I want you to really pause on that because that's really a big, big deal, right? We need to teach them how to let us handle their feet. So if you were working on something like a nail board, so this is for the trainers out there, if you're working on something like a nail board, I want you to also be working on foot handling just as diligently, session for session, minute per minute, right? Put just as much time and effort in working on foot handling as you are in teaching them to do their own nails, right? So here's another question. How do you even assess if a dog has filed their own nails effectively if you're not teaching them to let you touch their paws? I mean, do you wait for them to be asleep and take a peek at the foot? Do you wait until they're on the sofa and their feet are in view and you just kind of take a look and say, oh, I think he's going to need to scratch that left one down a little bit more, right? I just want to address that this isn't a really practical solution. And it is not like it's a quick fix. It's really time consuming to teach dogs to go ahead and just scratch down their own nails, right? So there are many reasons why dogs need to be comfortable with foot handling. Many, many, many reasons. And it's within the scope of dog training. right? We should be able to teach the average pet, the average house pet who is living in someone's home and sleeping on the sofa next to them during movies, should be able to allow people to touch their feet. It's a huge, huge safety issue if we're not working on it. But here are just a couple of examples of foot handling, right? My dog is limping. Let me take a look. My dog's feet are wet. Let me dry them off. My dog has something sticky on his paw that he's trying to chew. Let me clean it. And there's a big one, because sticky on his paw could be bubble gum or something like that that could have that xylitol sugar substitute on it, right? Like that's poisonous for dogs. If we don't know what's on their paw, we can't just let them pick at it, right? So I got something sticky on his paw that he's trying to chew. Let me clean it, right? My dog has a mat between his toes. Let me brush it or trim it. My dog's breed requires trimming. Let me clipper or scissor your fur, right? My dog requires a topical medication. Let me apply it, maybe even 2 to 3 times a day. My dog requires a bandage. Let me bandage you. My dog requires an x-ray. Let me position you. We can't simply avoid touching feet. And that has to be something that we're working on. So before we start thinking about how can we teach it and bypass the foot touching, we really need to think that touching the foot is the most important part. It's more important than the nail trim today. So much more important. So groomers, as you're talking to trainers, I want you to be thinking, I need to express to this trainer that I need this dog to allow me to handle their feet in a variety of ways, in a whole lot of ways, right? And if they're working on one particular solution, they also need to be working on touching. Touching from above, from below, from in front, from in back, to be really like getting fingers in between toes and not worry about what the dog is going to do. Like that's our goal. We want the dogs just be comfortable with it. We don't want to have treats out. We don't want to have a muzzle. We want to be able to have a dog be comfortable with it. And again, these are not wild animals and they are not living in a zoo, right? So we have house pets. We should be able to touch their feet. That is something really essential for a house pet to be able to do. If you're enjoying my podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Yesterday was pouring rain. So what happens when it's pouring rain around my house is my dogs are out back playing and I have to bring them in and towel them off. Pretty common. I find that most of us do that. I know that there are some people who aren't real comfortable toweling their dogs off, but we want our owners to be able to do that. So anyway, so I bring my own guys in and I towel them off. Now, one of my guys likes to be outside far more often in any weather. So one kind of needs to be pushed outdoors in the rain to go pee, and the other one would happily run around for days. He doesn't care how soaked he gets. But each time he comes in, not only am I toweling him off, but I'm telling him his body parts while I'm doing it and practicing stuff. So what kind of stuff am I practicing? I'm going over and I'm like, okay, over the nose, in your ears, under your belly, back foot, front foot. And then also yesterday, I was working on picking him up. So an arm underneath by his elbows and an arm underneath by his flank and lifting him up. Another time it was arm in between the front legs and an arm in between the back legs and lifting him up from the left, from the right. We kind of did it all day. Every single time he came in, he got wiped down and picked up. Now, one of the reasons why I do that is because long ago, when I first got him, he was almost 3. So, that kind of 2-year-old teenager-y kind of troublemaker that I got. And he was not used to being touched anywhere from like his rib cage back. He thought that was just weird. I don't think they ever really petted him that way, right? And because of that, he used to be really nervous about being touched and being picked up. So why not? Why not continue to practice it and to practice it all the time? So since I'm there on the floor, I'm already wiping him off. Yeah, I'm spending time picking him up. And also, he's not a newfie. He's only a border collie. He weighs about 45 pounds. So it's not like I'm killing myself lifting him every time. But I want him to be so used to it and continue to be used to it throughout his whole life. I will continue to work on that for his whole life. And it's more important for him than it is for my other guy who actually likes being picked up. But he likes being picked up, so he gets picked up pretty often too. Why not? It's just a fun thing to do with him. So anyway, he's coming in out of the rain, and I'm working on lifting him from his right side, from his left side, in a variety of different ways. One of the things I think that's really important for us as groomers and for trainers and vets and vet techs is to think about when we're lifting a dog, to kind of hold them in such a way that they feel secure. So I hold them close to my body, and we establish that you are now kind of clamped in next to me before the feet leave the floor, right? I want them to feel secure before I start to lift. And I think that that's really important, not only for the dogs to feel more secure while we're lifting, but also for our backs. Because God knows our backs are going to take a beating year after year of lifting dogs, right? But if we hold them really, really close and then smoothly lift, they're feeling more secure and they're being raised instead of being kind of like this feeling of being grabbed and tossed. and the way we set them down is just as important. So when I'm working on it at my back door, I'm picking him up, standing with him. Who's a good guy, right? And then I lower him down and we stay clamped together like that until I release him. So even though his feet are on the floor, I continue to be holding him tight. And I want you to do that because if you're lifting a dog up onto a table, let's say, so I'm going to use an example. Like I can't tell you how many golden retrievers I've known who really were kind of afraid of a table. I think it's just that some of these larger dogs don't get lifted very often, and they're up on a surface and it feels a little wiggly, and then they get their feet get all tensed up, which puts they're trying to dig their toenails in, but a grooming surface doesn't have any place for their toenails to dig in, so now they're skating on them, you know. But if we put them on the table and they're still being held by us, they're up against our body, and we allow them to relax before we let go. That pause together and then release is really important for a dog to feel secure. And it can also help with those dogs who are nervous and they're starting to, skate around on the tips of their nails to feel like, oh, okay, I can relax first. And you can help them relax before you let go. Now, another thing that happens with some of these dogs that are really nervous about being up on a surface is if you use like a yoga mat or one of the new paw mats, something that's cushiony, they can sink their claws into it a little bit if they're up on their toenails and help them relax more. But in general, part of what's happening is that they're just being like grabbed, tossed, and dunked, right? We don't want to grab, toss, and dump. We want to hold them close to us, lift them up, place them down, pause there for a second, and then let go. Pause for a second and let go. So when I practice it with my own guy, that's usually the kind of smooth moves I'm doing with him. But because he is now really, really comfortable with it, like I said, he's going to continue to work on it his whole life, but now he's 7, right? I've had him for quite a long time now. He's really comfortable with it. I'm just going to keep working on it for his whole life so that he never reverts back to thinking that that's scary. But because he is comfortable with it, now I occasionally do a more of a grab, quick lift, quick down, because I know that sometimes that's what they're going to get exposed to. I want you to think about building them up for something that's not real likely to happen. I'm his groomer, naturally, so it's not like he gets groomed by anybody else. But you know what? If he's at the animal hospital for some sort of an emergency, that might be what they do. I can get him used to that because I already have him really, really comfortable with being picked up in a variety of ways. So we as groomers can work on nice smooth motions, lifting, pausing, releasing, right? But also get used, if a dog is comfortable with that, getting them used to a more brisk kind of, oh, really quick, just like they would in an emergency situation at the vet. Just do it once in a while, right? But I want you to be thinking about lifting and holding close are things that our owners sometimes can be working on at home. And small dogs get lifted pretty often. That's pretty normal for a small dog to be lifted. But even if they can't lift their own dog, if they're holding them up close, getting them used to an arm around or arm under, or boosting a bum, which is something else I'll do with my guys. Every once in a while, I just like get an arm underneath them and boost a bum, like almost like we would have to do if we were just kind of helping them onto a table, like if we got their front feet up and then boost the back end. You can practice things like that on a sofa. You can practice those kind of things at home. You can practice those things helping them into the car, right? So sometimes we can have our owners understand a little bit more about what we need and to help the dogs get used to being lifted and being held, and to not just teach it and then let it go by the wayside. One of the things I think a lot of dog training customers get confused by is like, what? I taught him that. Yeah, but you don't work on it. You got to work on it. You got to keep working at it, because we can't just say, oh, he knows it. What if my dog doesn't get picked up for a year? Right? It could be really easy for some of these larger dogs to not get lifted up onto a table for an entire year, right? That's a long time. That's a really long time, right? Why not just practice it? Practice it all the time, right? Get them used to the idea that this is just part of, oh, look at this. I'm wiping down your feet. I'm down here on the floor with you anyway. Might as well boost you or lift you or hold you close or go through the motions, right? And like I said, even though my dogs are comfortable with it, I continue to work on it, because that's just money in the savings account, right? And I also don't want them to flail around and hurt somebody who tries to lift them. Now, one of my guys who likes being picked up, I could see him accidentally headbutting somebody being playful while they got picked up. So one of the things we work on with him is to be calm while being picked up. Now, sometimes he's getting picked up and it's wrestling goofy. And then he's, just a big flailing lunkhead that's going to break somebody's nose. But you really have to be goofy with him before he gets to that point. If you're just casually picking him up, he's just really casual about it. These are all things that help us. Help us as groomers, help us as trainers, help us as dog owners, help us at the vet's office, right? So there's no downside to working on it. The weekly action step this week is our steps for lifting. I want you to hold a dog close and secure, then lift them, place them on a surface, and pause there holding them close and secure before you let go. If you'd like to talk to me, you can find me through my grooming and training business, happycrittersdogtraining.com, my email, chrissy@happycritters.net, and through the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. And we have these awesome devices in our pockets that allow us to do live video with each other. I can help you with the dog on your table. We can set up live lessons, and you may be surprised at how much we can get accomplished together via video.